Hi, my sassy friends. Welcome back to another episode of Cash and Sass. My name is Lisa Marie. I am the brains behind Transcendent Wealth Company and this podcast, Cash and Sass. And today I'm going to tell you we're going to be hitting a nerve. And I mean that quite literally, okay? If you've ever felt like your energy is fried, your brain is foggy, or your body is just straight up boycotting your business, hello, this episode is for you. Because here's the thing. You can have the strategy, the systems, and the sales. And if your body's in burnout, your bank account's going to fill it. Remember those 5 wealth codes I constantly talk about? Here we go. You're going to feel it every single time. So my guest today is Amanda Hinman, a functional medicine health coach and founder of the Hinman Holistic Health Institute. She's helped hundreds of high-achieving women heal from hormone, mood, and gut imbalances so that they can reclaim their energy and their lives. I am all about those mood balances because let me tell you. But here's the thing. We're not going to be just talking about health because you know what Cash and Sass is all about, okay? We're going to be talking about how your biology impacts your ability to build wealth and why no amount of hustle will make up for a misaligned nervous system. All right, get ready. We're going to dive on into it. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. And I loved what you stood for when I was reading your stuff and all, and I couldn't wait to have you on. And what I want to hit on first is you work with women who feel exhausted and stuck in survival mode. Mm-hmm. So for business owners, how does that burnout actually show up on the financial side, the money side of things?
Mm-hmm. It's real. And I think for business owners, for entrepreneurs, it's even more impactful, at least because honestly, the statistics show that metabolic dysfunction leads to 2 to 4 times missed days of work. Essentially, if you're not feeling well, if you're not at your best capacity, you either are not doing the work and not staying mentally focused, sharp, magnetic and attractive, or you are doing it at kind of a lower, just kind of pushing through, making it happen, really not in that creative, inviting energy, right? So the statistics show us that when we have metabolic dysfunction, which is really at the root of thyroid and hormone imbalance, your energy cellular capacity is decreased. And another report by the CDC discovered that people who were in the highest income brackets, meaning highest income earners, quite literally had a 26% greater cellular energy capacity. So their bodies are just performing at a higher level, right? So it's no wonder that they have greater resilience, more creativity, more influence. They're mentally sharp and focused. They can be more effective at everything they're doing, hence the increased earning capacity that goes hand in hand with that. So when we think about business owners, you're responsible for the revenue and the income generation in your business. I think this is absolutely a hot topic for your audience in particular.
Yeah, because, and this kind of goes into what I would say is, one of the profit leaks, right? Which is also one of the most expensive ones out there because I say it all the time, the reason I created the 5 wealth codes, which is spiritual, energetic, mental, physical, and financial, is because they all intertwine with each other and they all affect each other. And so I know before I was working out and taking care of my body and looking at the things that could be shifting my hormones, I'm now going through menopause, perimenopause, menopause, I don't care which one they call it. It all sucks. And truthful, can't help it. Hit that over 50 age and it just don't care.
Yeah, your body changes, right?
Right. It's just, we become very powerful beings. And I didn't realize that they were telling the truth and not exaggerating until then. But I could go on that, a whole nother topic. But I digress. And the thing is that these things create profit leaks. We just don't realize it because we're not paying attention to the fact of how they affect our money and our financial side. And that's why I say it's one of the most expensive financial leaks. So I am not in any way, shape, or form a medicine hormonal expert, okay? So from a functional medicine and neuroscience perspective, which I know is your superpower and
bread and butter. Yeah.
I'm so excited for this. What actually happens in the body when we're trying to scale a business from a dysregulated place. I know personally what's happened when I've tried to do it and realized I was doing it from a dysregulated, but I would like my listeners to understand what actually happens.
How to recognize the symptoms. Well,
Yes.
first and foremost, I think of it this way. When we have I'll put this in the context of, and it can be applied to how you show up in your business, like your business activities, right? Or that could be applied to how you show up with healthy habits and lifestyle routines and actions that you take. But when we have a dysregulated nervous system, for example, somebody who essentially has just a really low capacity and cellular energy capacity means when everything in your life is kind of smooth and going a-okay and as you would expect, then you can be sharp and kind of be on your game and feel good and be magnetic, right? However, if there's going to be a little bit of an interruption, it throws you out of that regulation place to that either fight or flight, that what we call hyper responsive. So this can look like, from a health perspective, this can look like jumping from one diet to the next diet, to reading more and Googling the next thing on the internet and trying to find what's the next thing wrong that's going to fix, the symptom of insomnia and wired thoughts and racing mind, or going from doctor to doctor to get another second opinion, third opinion, and keep running tests, keep trying to, start, stop a supplement. I heard about this and then I started it, but it didn't seem to do much. So it's not working for me. I'm going to try another thing. It's like all of this kind of disjointed action, but it usually tends to have a lot of busy action. Well, when we think about it from a business perspective, it's the same thing. If it's you feel like you're jumping from answering emails to trying to put together a social media post to connect with other, networking referral partners, and you're kind of just jumping all over the place, you don't have your kind of routine and you don't have kind of a systematic approach that works for you, this is a sign of overwhelm. This is a sign of dysregulation in your business, and it starts with dysregulation in your body. The other flip side of the coin that's also a symptom of dysregulation, which is hypo-responsive, right? When everything gets kind of slowed down from a hormonal perspective or a health perspective, this looks like you just almost procrastinate. You have an idea of what would be good for you to get out and go for a walk when you get up in the morning and get some morning sunlight, and get some movement going, or it would be good for you to sit down and actually prepare a meal for dinner instead of just kind of grabbing the quick fix, convenient item. But you procrastinate. You can't get yourself to take the action. Or you find yourself just vegging out on Netflix and kind of scrolling through social media, right? There are all these things that they hang over your head because you know that they would support you. Same thing with actions in your business. They know that they would be beneficial, but for whatever reason, you can get yourself to record the marketing content and put yourself out there on a new stage, right?
Right.
Or reach out to these prospective people that have inquired about your business or inquired about how you do work, and you just kind of duck that or put on the back burner. These are all signs of our behavior, are signs that show us when we're dysregulated in our nervous system. If it doesn't feel like something is calm, almost familiar and comfortable, anytime we have an unexpected circumstance, it throws us haywire. Likely we have a really low threshold in our body's nervous system. So a lot of people try and fix it with trying to make themselves or willpower themselves. And that's where I'm we have to look deeper. We actually have to look at the root of what's happening physiologically in your body that's causing this dysregulation. And obviously, as you talk a lot about, the nervous system is so important to use. We have amazing brain science that we now know.
If we listen to it, right?
Yeah, that we can actually rewire the brain so that your brain can have a highway to curiosity or contentment or to clarity, as opposed to a highway to overwhelm or a highway to exhaustion, right? Where we start to feel those emotions very quickly. We can rewire this by taking some intentional choices and actions. But I would say, in a large part, what I see most common, especially with female entrepreneurs and high achieving women that I work with, is they're actually undernourished. Because in order for your cells, we have trillions of cells in the body. In order for your cells to function at a high level, they need the vitamins and the minerals and the antioxidants and the amino acids and nutrients to run the citric acid cycle, the cycle that makes energy inside each and every cell in the body. And sometimes people get so busy in their business or their life that they forget to have enough self-prioritization, self-care to be intentional with how they're nourishing their cells, quite literally. So one of the core things I talk about, in my program, in my book, and all the work that we do is we help people to understand. First, let's look at the root cause of what's causing this dysregulation in your nervous system. And let's kind of come up with a game plan for you to help support that. And then second is replenishing nutrients. Because ultimately, if you have this consistent supply of nutrients, a well-balanced supply of nutrients, then your capacity for generating energy expands, right? And I'm happy to share, if it's helpful with your listeners, like a super simple one-hand meal plan approach to help you start to think about, how can I nourish my body? How can I nourish my cells consistently?
And we'll definitely get into that. And it kind of comes to me where I say, I tell we need to listen to our gut, our nervous system, because if it's, I say that it holds the receipts and it's talking to us just like our bank account is. And if we would listen, and what ends up stopping us is we don't listen. And I think it's truly important to understand there is a connection to how we go about our business, because if we're dysregulated and we're all out of whack, then we're not going to be able to focus or not only we're not going to be able to focus, but we're not going to be aligned with what we're wanting to do in our business. And alignment is the key to becoming wealthy. Y'all know I talk about this constantly, okay? So my question is, what's the connection between the nervous system's regulation and a woman's capacity to receive? Like to receive, hold, or even ask for money? Because we already know women have this, thing with money. We weren't taught to talk about it. We weren't taught to manage it. It was one of those taboo things that we're not supposed to talk about, which hence what started Cash and Sass. And so I'm curious as to what you think the connection between those is, especially for women.
Yeah, and I love this actually, because you kind of alluded to it earlier when you talked about perimenopause, menopause, our body shifted.
You know what? Let me tell you.
Right.
I send reels and jokes all the time about it. I'm like, this is where you're going to get today. Fair warning.
Totally. Well, and actually I love that, because my perspective, and I'll share this in case it's like plant a seed for let's see how this resonates and how this lands with you and your listeners, Lisa Marie, is our bodies are designed differently. We all know that. Women's bodies are very different than men's bodies. Specifically, we have what I call the gift of menopause. And yes, it can be a gift if we are learning a new way of working with it. And here's why. Once you go through and enter the perimenopause and then menopause seasons of life, it's when your sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, predominantly, also testosterone shifts a little bit, mostly estrogen and progesterone, start to decline. As our ovaries wind down, we have less sex hormones. Why does that matter? Well, sex hormones act as a buffer and a regulator to cortisol, which is an adrenal hormone. So when we're in our childbearing years, I think nature knew moms, they have a lot that they handle and that they're responsible for when they're in the childbearing season and the raising of children, right? So it's almost like it gave us this extra buffer cushion of sex hormones to be able to tolerate the demands that raising offspring would have on our lives. Then when we go through menopause, those buffer hormones diminish. So all of a sudden, the things that we could get away with, or the lifestyle routines and patterns and choices that we had with those sex hormone buffer, it wasn't as pronounced of an effect. But then when they're declining or at a lower level during menopause, now all of a sudden we get to see the true nature of how cortisol, an adrenal hormone, right? Cortisol is what is triggered when we're in the body is in fight or flight response. Cortisol and also neopinephrine, epinephrine, like adrenaline, right? These are the stress response hormones that are sent out when the body is in fight or flight, when we think of like that nervous system upregulation mode. And when all of a sudden we don't have kind of this cushion, this buffer mitigating the effects of that, and we have sustained periods of time, days or hours or months, with cortisol cranking through our system, now we see the breakdown, right? It causes more inflammation, it causes more brain fog, more moodiness. Like the effects of sustained stress response on the body become heightened during a time that the estrogen and progesterone are lower. So how does that affect a woman's ability to receive? Actually, I think it's a new perspective shift, and it's a new way to look at it. But what if the exact physiological transformation that takes place during menopause is an kind of like, sometimes it's okay, like an invitation. Sometimes it's like a slap you over the head to be like, dude, what you're doing isn't working. You have to change things up. You get to prioritize your own self-nurture, your own self-love, put us into the receiving mode for ourselves rather than being the always provider mode of everyone else, kids, spouses, friends, family. Women historically have been the nurturer, the caretaker.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like our bodies physiologically shift on us and say, whoa, 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 we need to kind of change direction here in order for you to have the energy, have the mental clarity, have the things that you desire. It can't be all about everyone else in the same degree anymore. It gets to be more about what really is filling my plate, what is enlivening my flow, my creativity, you use the word alignment, like really forcing us to connect with how can we live our life and make choices that are going to amplify your ability to be in the receiving mode, right? Does that make sense? So it's kind of like, sometimes it can be a harsh way of doing it because it's like, it can feel like a jostling transition. But I actually think that happens very intentionally. And women, especially once they reach that perimenopause and menopause season, can be primed to be in the most advantageous, lucrative receiving space if they honor those signals.
You're the second person who's actually said that in the last 2 days.
Right.
And it makes sense because last year, I'm very honest. Everybody who watches my podcast knows this about my story. I'm very honest about my journey. I am a fractional CFO, wealth mentor, and I don't sugarcoat things, okay? Life is going to happen. The key of being wealthy is being able to navigate those things. And one of the things my coach taught me was to, and something I've been recognizing that I've been able to do more of now that I'm in the stage that I'm in, is be the calm in the chaos. Yeah. And when we're able to be grounded and be the calm in, because like he said, life is always going to have chaos.
Yeah.
And most people go, no, it's not. Okay, you know what? I actually sat down and thought about it. Yes, it is. Because we all constantly say, well, when I get here, I'll be ready. Or when this happens, I'll be ready. And when it happens, we're still not ready. And it's because life is always chaotic. And so that key is being the calm in the chaos. Well, part of that, last year, I was not the calm in chaos, but Phoenix came in and she burnt everything to the ground, personal business, because it needed to be restructured. And now I'm seeing why, because of where I'm in the perimenopause, menopause stages, what I was doing is no longer aligned, or how I was doing it, who I was serving is no longer aligned. And like Amanda said, it's a wake-up call. I'm hard-headed, so it had to slap me up against the head, okay? I wish it was. I'm hard-headed. It had to literally just take the sign and just smack me in my head of it. And because of that, now shifts are being changed, and now I'm more aligned, and I'm also more aligned in other areas of my business. And now we're shifting the things to make it completely more aligned so that it can grow even more. Whereas before, it was not like we're stagnated, but it was like I had a cap on it, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And I love the way you're talking about, because that's why I had energetic wealth as one of the wealth codes, is because when our energy is basically misaligned, our money is going to be too. And what happens when that shifts is we have to realize that our energy, like the focus of our energy, needs to change, and it can't stay the way it was. Now, I am 52. I, however, started having kids late in life.
Mhm.
Okay, another story, another day. Wasn't supposed to have any, again, another story, another day. I have a 14-year-old. I am not through with my quote unquote raising my kids.
Mhm.
There are days where she's 14, y'all. That should say everything. And that doesn't stop the change. The focus, the energy still needs to be. It's still the same way it's always been. If you're on an airplane and something happens, they don't tell you to put the mask on the kids or the mask on anybody else. They tell to put the mask on you first. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to have anything to give. If you're not putting the mask on yourself, you're not going to be able to make sure you can put the mask on anybody else. I use that analogy because to me, it's the perfect analogy for everybody to understand. You have to make sure you're taking care of yourself. And the same thing with that energy. If the energy is misaligned, meaning how you're using your energy, how you're making sure your energy is filled up, then it's going to be misaligned in your money and everywhere else. And I love how you explain that, because I just think it's really, really important. Okay. You've had to overcome the belief that it was selfish to invest in yourself. That's one of the things that you put.
Yep.
How did that belief show up in your money decisions and hold your business back?
It actually, it did show up in a big way because prior to launching my business, this was back over 10 years ago, I was the primary caretaker for my 4 daughters. I was home and my husband was earning most of the income that supported our family. And the idea of, you know, investing in something that I felt super passionate about because I had had a health transformation. It was interesting for me because originally I had no problem investing in health because I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition and was in a really bad place. And then my daughter had a health crisis. So from like a personal perspective, it was easy to say like, oh, well, this is necessary. Like we have to take care of our health. We got into a really bad place, right? And then when it came to like what I learned, and when I went back to school to learn functional medicine and how everything is interconnected and related, and use this knowledge and this, empowerment to help other individuals, other women who wanted to have that same sense of purpose, that same sense of clarity and ease with managing their own health. The idea of like, oh wow, I have to hire a business coach, and like this is like they're big. I made 6-figure investments over the years to learn how to do marketing, to learn how to, really put together a cohesive way of delivering services that are transformational. And it was interesting because it felt like, in some sense, this is taking not only time and money away from my family, right? It's like, oh, they had been my priority, my focus. Now, what I've learned since then is like, holy cow, it's the best investment you can ever make. It's investing in yourself. Because when you go through the journey of whether it be a health transformation, expanding and growing your business, you change internally. And when you expand who you are, you magnify who the real authentic version of you is, everyone around you benefits. So like it's easier to look back and say, oh, I'm so glad I did it. That's times when you're in the moment and you feel like, do I want to make this investment for this mentor? Like, this is a big step forward, and it feels like scary and uncertain and unknown. But yeah, definitely. It was recognizing that I feel like that was a divine redirection going through my own personal health journey and my family's health transformation, that it was like a God-given redirection of like, you have this knowledge, you have this skill, you have this ability. So it's really more than just about you. It's about helping other women who are on that same journey. They want that same empowerment, that same clarity for themselves. So being willing to invest in that was uncomfortable at first.
Right,
For sure.
right. Right, right. And very so. I mean, sometimes it is uncomfortable to invest in some things, but sometimes that's what it takes is to be able to step out of our comfort zone.
I would say
and
usually that's what it takes. Yeah.
right. And, to me, that's a bold money move, right?
Mhm.
Is investing in that level mentorship. And that felt terrifying. And what goes through your mind, or what went through your mind when you, at that moment when you were making that investment? Because I know for like, look, the first couple of times I did, I was like, okay, you know, goes from the oh shit to, and then realizing, hey, you know what? I'm investing in myself. This is going to make me better. This is going to make my business better. Therefore, it's going to make. But so, what was going through your mind in that moment when you were doing that very first thing that's terrifying?
Really just like, it was more like questioning of like, is this really going to provide me what I think it is? Is this really going to help me
Is it
create
going to have an
results?
ROI?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The ROI. Is this going to create a return on the investment of my time and money? Honestly, and
Right.
I look at those actually like unanimously. It's
Oh, I
actually
say it
probably
all the
easier
time.
to use
Sometimes
money.
your return on investment is not money. Sometimes it is time.
Yep.
Sometimes it is energy and the
Mhm.
stress that you're not going to have. Hands down.
Yep.
I constantly say that when you're looking at return on investment, it can't just be the dollar sign that you're looking at, because sometimes return on investment is time. And to me, time is just as important as money.
Yep.
It's just as part of being wealthy as money. Is very, very important.
Sure.
One of the things I'm curious about is you talked about why bother syndrome, the emotional shutdown that so many women go through. So how does that mindset sneak into their finances?
Yeah. Well, the why bother syndrome, I think it's interesting because I look at it from a action perspective. When we think about it in terms of health perspective, why bother? A lot of times when we're like, oh, I just don't feel good. I know I've had bloating or weight gain. I've been struggling with this for several months. I wish I could do something better, but I've tried it before. I've tried the diet plans. I've tried to increase my exercise. I've tried these things and it doesn't work. So we kind of get into that why bother. Or if you feel like, hey, I've had sleepless nights for the last, 2 out of the last 7 nights. I want it to be more consistent and steady, so I get a good night's sleep. I wake up feeling energized and refreshed, but I don't know what could change, what could improve things. Why bother doing more? Or, it's a matter of perhaps you've thought about whether it be making an investment in your business. You've thought about getting additional support or mentorship. Or for me, you've thought about getting additional support and coaching and clarity around what your hormone balance is and what your body actually needs. Now, you've thought about these things, but they're always at the bottom of the to-do list that don't actually get actioned. So when it comes to why bother syndrome, whether it's related to finances or health, I think it comes down to what is it that you have a desire for, but you're not actioning. If you're not taking action on it, there is some type of resistance, or in other words, some type of belief or narrative that's actually inhibiting you actioning and putting that into practice, right? So asking yourself, where is it that you would like to, maybe it's, with finances, I'd like to be earning more. Okay, well, why aren't we taking the actions to do money revenue generating activities to a higher degree, right? Or maybe it's, I'd like to be saving more and creating my wealth portfolio. Okay, well, why isn't that happening? Why are we actioning that? It's looking at the beliefs and the thoughts that are underpinning the inactivity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so. And I think it's important to realize just how they're all connected. I keep saying that. I'm sure I'm going to keep saying it, and it's going to be a broken record. So, and I know many are going to insist, so I'm going to ask, what's one practical step a woman can take this week if she feels like she's in survival mode and her finances are feeling stuck or foggy, and she's just, like you're talking about, she's in bother mode? What's one thing that they could do, like right now?
What I go back to nourishment, right? At the end of the day, I'm like every single cell in the body needs fuel in order to have energy. If you feel completely wiped out and depleted of energy, how are you nourishing yourself? And this is where I can share the one hand meal plan, PFFP, keep it simple. Thinking about P is a palm sized serving of protein at each meal. Do you have at least a palm sized serving of some type of healthy protein to fuel your cells? F, that first F, is for fiber rich foods, something that is going to be giving your gut microbiome what it needs to be able to synthesize hormones and keep you balanced, keep you mentally stable and clear. These are things like whole grains or seeds and nuts, a fistful, like if you're doing a scoop of fiber rich foods at each meal. The second F is for omega-3 fatty acids, looking for a thumb size serving of healthy omega-3 fatty acids at each meal, like olive oil or a couple slices of avocado or some nuts and seeds that you sprinkle over a salad. And then V, vegetable. We need lots of brightly colored, rich veggies. So at least a full fist of vegetables at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I would say you can start that today. Like, am I looking at my breakfast and my dinner today? Do I have a protein? Do I have a fiber? Do I have a healthy fat? And do I have a veggie? Because if you don't have that consistently, it's no wonder your body can be running on an empty gas tank. Your cells
Right.
don't have what they need to produce energy for you.
Right. Right. That makes complete sense. I mean, I have been increasing my protein a lot with my workouts and stuff like that. Okay. What does the true wealth embodiment look like for you today? And I ask this because I know to me it has to be embodiment. It has to be embodied because wealth, to me, wealthy is more than money. It's, again, the wealth codes. And how does that differ from you just having high income?
Yeah, wealth embodiment's interesting because I would say I'm in a place for right now, I'm embodying wealth in the way that is so juicy and desirable in my life, in the sense that, yes, there is a steady and consistent and overflowing flow of revenue and money into my life, into and through my life. Also, time. You talked about time. I actually think time is even more valuable at this season in my life. It used to be that I was working longer hours and really kind of back-to-back sessions on my computer, Zoom sessions, like probably over 50 hours a week. And that I had higher revenue at certain points, but I definitely had more burnout and my energy levels were depleted. I personally was not having the joy and the enthusiasm, the eagerness for what I do in the same way. And so being in a place where you can wake up and you feel excited about what is unfolding in your life, you have the capacity to have some, for me, flexibility. Like, it's not, everything is not so structured every single day looking the same. There's some built-in structure, but there's also then built-in kind of variety, like built-in spaciousness, if you will. And having, like, I guess it's just being able to have the time to do like the resets, like have the time to be able to go take a 30-minute walk at lunch and really enjoy it, and meet up with a neighbor to play pickleball in the afternoon, and like to be able to do those things fuels my energy. And it's like that's what
Right.
gives me creativity and passion for being so on point with my clients and serving and delivering in a high capacity.
Yeah, very much so. Amanda, this has been a truly, truly powerful conversation. And I know so many of the women listening, my listeners, I'm sure they're having just huge light bulb moments and realizing that how their body has been trying to send them messages, and not only how, but that they have been sending them messages, and that their money mindset, never could, right? So their body's sending them messages saying, hey, we're connected. There's a thing here. And now they're realizing the connection, which I'm very, very thankful for because, again, it's all intertwined. Before we wrap up, though, I want you to tell everyone where they can find you, how they can get their hands on that free thyroid and hormone health assessment that you mentioned that was a free offer for them. If you could tell them where they can find you and connect with you and how they can get that free offer.
Yes, definitely. You can go to Hinman Holistic. That's HINMAN holistic.com. And you can see my thyroid and hormone solution book. You can also get the free thyroid and hormone assessment, which is where you kind of map your symptoms, the things that are showing up in your body with the top 6 metabolic hormones to see where's your body asking for help? Where is it asking for a little bit more attention and support hormonally? And you can also find me on Instagram at Hinman Amanda. I'm posting there and there all the time. So always offering workshops and different tools and inspiration as well.
Well, and those links, y'all, are going to be in the show notes. So make sure you look at them. We'll have all of it there. And my sassy friends, if this episode has hit home and you're starting to see that wealth is way more than just revenue and money, then it's time to take the next step. If your profit is leaking, your energy is tanking, or your money is feeling like a confusing cluster, you know what? I want to invite you to book a wealth alignment call with me. We'll look at what's working, what's draining you, and how to realign your finances, your energy, and the CEO decisions that you are making so that you can scale without burning out and truly not only create the wealth, but retain it and expand it. Because because wealthy women don't just manage the money, they embody it. And so until next time, I want you to stay sassy and let your cash work as hard as you do. So until next time, bye.